So thank you all for joining us for this session today. I'm Alice. I'm with Brick and Mortar Ventures, a construction tech investor. And I hope that we have some robotics enthusiasts in the room. And if you're not, thank you. Yes. And if you're not, hopefully we turn you into one. So kind of setting the stage for the panel, I think everyone here has probably heard about the construction labor shortage. Construction labor shortage has been around for a long time, and executives have talked about it. There's been a lot of reports, especially during and after the pandemic, about how there's up like 6 figures of vacancies in labor shortage for construction. So construction labor shortage is not new, but construction robotics is still fairly new. And somehow those two words have kind of become synonymous with each other, whether we like it or not. But there are a lot of other reasons as to why we should be implementing, adopting construction robotics. We have a great set of panelists here today, and I'm actually going to let them introduce themselves, tell us a little bit about who you are, what company do you work for, and what does your company do. Kevin?
Great. Thanks, Alice. I'm Kevin Albert, the co-founder and CEO of Canvas. Canvas makes basically a new class of machinery for construction. We build robots that actually do the installation of building materials. So much like excavators were a class of new machinery for the exteriors in dirt moving, and made a huge industry on that. In interiors, we really see mostly just hand tools. We don't see a lot of sophisticated machines to help with the building. And that's what Canvas does, is we've created a platform that allows you to actually do the installation. And our go-to-market is in drywall finishing. So we've got a drywall finishing system that allows us to both improve the schedule and the cost of doing drywall finishing and reduce the number of days that it takes to do that work. And so we do that through a sophisticated sensing system that allows us to calibrate to any site and apply materials accurately, and then advanced automation that allows us to really put those materials on with precision and change the process, and do that under the guidance of construction workers today.
Tessa?
Hi, I'm Tessa Lau, CEO and founder at Dusty Robotics. Dusty creates end-to-end solutions that accelerate the digitization of the entire construction workflow using a combined hardware-software solution that oriented around the digital model, brings that model out into the field and allows people to build off of it. So think of it as BIM-powered robots for the construction site. We're Series B, robots all across the US. Happy to talk more.
Henning?
Great. Hi, everyone. Henning Roedel, and I'm with DPR Construction. I'm the robotics lead for the company. DPR is a top 10 GC here in the United States, but we also have offices internationally. We do a lot of commercial facilities and advanced technology facilities. So excited to talk about the customer side of robotics and our vision of the future.
Awesome. I'm Brent Wadas with BotBuilt. Bottom line is we build homes with robots. We take 2-dimensional plans, turn into 3D modeling, have the cut list all built out in a few minutes. And from there, it automatically generates robotic code where our custom tools put your stuff together. And then I moonlight as an outside sales rep for Josh at Planted. So 2 shares? Good. We're good.
So as you can tell, I'm sitting with people who are actually not from the construction industry. So Henning works at a construction company, but his background is actually in the technology side of things. And I, being a construction person, I'm actually very proud and excited that we are now seeing a lot of people from outside of the construction industry building technologies for our industry. And it really wasn't until probably the last couple of years when we started seeing more construction robotics startups pop up. And I think a lot of that had to do with rising labor costs in construction, the cost of robotics starting to drop. And I think for some reason, these roboticists have found out about construction being a big market, and it's not digitized. It's second least digitized industry in the world. I'm sure you guys have seen the McKinsey charts. And yeah, it's a really big market. So thank you guys for kind of joining our industry and building tech for our industry. So I think one of the key things that we want to talk about today is, why do we need construction robotics? And I alluded to this earlier, there's safety, there's high cost of labor, there's material costs, there's a lot of things that the construction industry is plagued with. But one of the things, with productivity and looking at, construction being a very physical process, you really can't solve construction with pure software. Like there are so many project management softwares that you can implement, and yes, it adds value, and yes, they are, making workflows more productive, but at the end of the day, we're building physical stuff. Like it's real stuff. And the only way that you're gonna, help us build faster is by augmenting the workforce on site to build safer, faster, more efficiently. So with that being said, I actually want to ask Henning, what do you think about, construction robotics, and why now for construction robotics?
Yeah, I mean, it's really an exciting time. So there's an influx of investment. We saw that on the last panel, and I think we're all here today because of that investment. And it's not just construction tech, but it's prop tech. It's facing all facets of AEC. So that's one thing. That's the fuel to the fire. We have the need because of the labor shortage, and then we have the availability of the resources that just haven't been available before, right? We have mobility. We have experts in the field that can bring that mobility to the work front. Right? Manufacturing, construction differentiate themselves in one key facet, and that is that in manufacturing, the work comes to you. In construction, we go to the work, right? So that's one of the major differences, and self-driving tech and sort of the confluence of new software libraries and intelligent people kind of all coming together make this viable. So it's a really exciting time, and we're seeing now successful solutions have entered the market. We're starting to see some platform plays. And so it's just a really exciting time. And my role now is more chief evangelist for people to come into our industry, either as an investor, as an entrepreneur, or as technologists. And I want to support that. So we have a robust construction robotics field.
Awesome. And I'm obviously also a little biased coming from industry. And at Brick and Mortar Ventures, we've done a couple of hardware and robotics investments. And I've kind of seen this interesting, I guess, feedback from the construction industry where there's been almost this, a ton of software solutions out there today. And a lot of contractors have actually been bombarded with so many options when it comes to the software side of things. But when it comes to the hardware side of things, it just seems to be a lot easier to understand, to grasp. The ROIs are easier to calculate. So Henning, could you comment a little bit about how you've seen kind of adoption and implementation from new construction tech software versus hardware and robotics?
Yeah, I mean, everything we're seeing here, and each one of these individuals who have created solutions, right, it's white space. In reality, like the automation technology, what it does for productivity is quite incredible. It's also really interesting. It usually comes from a perspective of safer operations, higher quality than what we usually see, right? Which is laborious manual tasks. And so it solves quite a few problems, both immediately but also downstream on our projects. So implementing it is actually fairly easy. Now, realizing those results and convincing every single project team, that's the true work that we're going through right now. But that's really what we're seeing in terms of these solutions, right? And I think Tessa is in the only field right now that's actually crowded, as we're starting to see more and more layout tools, automated layout tools. But other than that, there really isn't another Canvas. There really isn't another hardware company that does exactly what each one of these companies is doing. So it's really exciting times for us. It does make the selection process a lot easier. We don't have to worry about the data flowing and does it work with this system or that system. And we don't have to worry about necessarily getting to a point where we've made a decision on, or we've gone down one path with one solution provider, but oh, there's this shiny object over here. It just hasn't happened yet in robotics. It will one day.
Thank you. And I guess robotics, tying this back to the labor shortage, how do you think GCs should think about the labor shortage in robotics?
I see this twofold, right? So one, we want to attract new people into our industry, a younger generation. And so these robotic tools provide really interesting jobs, whether they're in a safer environment or they're just, leveraging the skill sets that younger folks have developed and they want to work with, and they're comfortable with. So That's one way, is attracting new talent to our industry. It's also attracting really brilliant minds to our industry to help solve some of our biggest challenges. So that's one side of it. And the other side is that it's increasing the productivity. So maybe we don't need as many people in our industry because we can be more productive. It's yet to play out, but that's definitely a hope and a vision for this.
Yeah, I would definitely say we're still early days in construction robotics, but it is exciting that I think we have definitely more than 5 construction robotics startups and nearing probably 10, more than 10. And depending on how you classify robotics, there's, software robotics more on the, automation side. And then of course we have, physical construction robotics, and that's what we're talking about today. So thank you, Henning, for kind of setting the stage and kind of giving us background on, construction and the customer's perspective. So now on to the founder side. So Tessa, you've been at Dusty for a while, and you've been working on this for definitely more than 5 years now. And I think you guys are the most mature construction robotics startup, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong.
I would totally agree with that.
+1.
Could you talk a little bit about when you saw an inflection point in your company's journey?
Well, first of all, there's way more than 5 robotic startups out there. There's I think the Built World had a top 50. So there's a big field of robotic startups out there. I would say that we've actually been, I wouldn't call them, they're like a single inflection point, but what we're seeing is just rapid growth. And the rate of that growth has been accelerating over time for us. Some of the notable milestones that we have are, adoption all across the US on projects. We hit 40 million square feet that we've laid out earlier this year, and it's growing rapidly. Just recently, we did a 4 million square foot data center. So, that number is growing by leaps and bounds. And I think the other thing that I'll point out in terms of inflection is really just, Henning pointed to this earlier, the fact that there are several competitors in the space now, I think is a really good sign that this market for layout robotics is maturing. And so we're seeing that in the sense that I walk into a room and 95% of the people have heard about Dusty Robotics. That to me is like an inflection point in awareness and just recognition that this is here to stay. This is something that's real, and that pretty much most of the industry, even if they're not using it right now, they already know about it and they will be using it in the future.
I guess maybe a quick audience show of hands. Who's here from industry? Okay, and how many of you guys have heard of some type of layout robot? It's pretty good. Yeah, I would say pretty mature. Thanks, Tessa. And Kevin, I'm thankful that we had kind of front row seats and watching kind of Canvas's journey as part of the Brick and Mortar Ventures investment. And I know that you guys have gone through a couple of different business models. So could you talk a little bit about how you guys have thought about business model changes and kind of how you did that to accommodate the construction industry?
Yeah, I would say accommodate the construction industry, learn where the best fit was in it, but also as our company matured, the evolution of our company as the product matured. So we started as a subcontractor doing drywall finishing work across the Bay Area. So we did over 60 projects in the Bay Area, left them all above quality spec and ahead of schedule, which was a great feat, and had 0 injuries in that time as a subcontractor. The interesting thing about that is we were generally selling to general contractors when we were in that mode, and it was a very transactional deal, just a subcontractor selling square footage to a general contractor. And we did this for a couple of reasons. One, we wanted to eat our own dog food and stub our toe and learn really what customers needed. The second thing is we didn't want to give anybody in the construction industry a robot that had wires hanging out of it. And so we really wanted to get to mature the platform. But the third reason, and we really thought this was going to sustain it, was that we thought this would actually be an easier way into the industry, easier adoption. And that's one of the places we actually realized that we were wrong, and that it was really great learning to understand how to fit our company with the industry. Couple reasons it was wrong is drywall is bid out by wall and ceilings contractors that do framing, hanging, finish, acoustics, sometimes even EFIS and other things. And we did finish. So we were like, hey, GCs, break up the scope for us and also go to your customers that you trust and tell them they don't get this segment of the business. And that coupled with the fact that what we really learned is the subcontractor is who has the pain. They're the one who has to find all the workers to do the work. They're the ones who are on the hook for quality and schedule. And they're the ones who might eat it if they have to work longer hours because something got delayed or the quality wasn't right. And so what we found out is that our value is just incredibly high to subcontractors. And what we also learned is that they were very eager to start using our tools. As we started doing enough projects and being successful on them, we constantly had people asking, can they have a tool? Can they buy a tool? Can they teach their people to use it? And so that was the moment that we actually switched to becoming a tool provider, which fits us much better as a technology company. And that's been very effective. And so we've experimented with a lot of things too along how to sell. We started out doing leases that were just project-based leases. And we found out at this stage of an evolution of our company, the continuity of customer was not very good. You'd have someone work with you for 3 months and then come back a lot farther down the line. Now we really work with customers who use it on all of their backlogs, so there's very, very high continuity. So tons of learning and evolution for us as we've continued to learn with all of you, and it's been really like an excellent process, and we'll continue to see more.
Yeah, I would say Canvas is probably the most mature when it comes to business model changes, and well, I think it's a good thing. I mean, when we talk to a lot of construction robotics startups, like they always ask us like, oh, what is the best business model? And frankly, Canvas is one of the great examples of, what is one very good path to approach the construction industry with robotics. So thank you for that. So yeah, Dusty, Canvas, both on-site robotics. Now moving on to Brent with BotBuilt, off-site robotics. And I think with off-site robotics, that lends itself to having a bit more flexibility in terms of how you work with the industry. So Brent, can you talk a little bit about partnerships and how you guys are handling that?
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun because hearing Kevin talk about the Canvas business model changing, it's kind of like we go to sometimes an industry that's been doing the same thing forever, and it's to me like a NASA guy in 1960 going, so what's the best way to land on the moon, really? What have you guys found works? And that this is new territory. So for us being off-site, we've had a lot of opportunity to work with all sorts of different people, from builders, large-scale developers, small-scale developers, custom home builders. And because we've got kind of a weird system in that we have a system that learns data every plan it goes through, for us being able to take in thousands of plans from thousands of different builders and build that data set up and build robotic code that matters from that, it's been a learning experience, I guess, and who we should be working with, who is our target market. And what we found is we've really, in the beginning anyway, kind of had to split up our book of business into different types. So we have smaller scale builders that are just looking to go from like 500 homes a year to 6,000 homes a year and don't have the labor for it, as you spoke to earlier. And we can just build them components like any component manufacturer. For larger scale builders, we're working with them right now on more of a development of what I guess you would consider a RAS contract, but it's not RAS per se. It's them owning the factory, them owning the small footprints CapEx, and then us supplying them with the licensure and the software. And then in between, we have a lot of lumber providers that are now talking with us, and lumber yards and builders like that just want to have our software on hand for those little quick takeoffs for the development of better software system. All the while we're having to grow new tech for our hardware to move into commercial spaces, et cetera. So it's just been nice to have that flexibility, not be tied to any one thing. But what's been really interesting is as bad of a rep as I think the construction industry gets for not adopting robotic things, we haven't run into that. It's been more of a cool, you can help my labor out, we're in. So for us, it's just been, let's go.
Yeah, and I think that's an interesting point, and Kevin touched on this too. He called it a tool.
Yes.
And it's just this interesting thing where, like, to make it sound kind of cool and flashy, you call it construction robotics. But at the end of the day, the people who are using the robotics, they see it as a tool and a piece of equipment, right? That's ingrained into their workflows. And I think, thinking about, why invest in construction robotics, right? Like the reason, how we look at it is, when we look at construction robotics investments, we look at, is it solving a big problem? Is there, something within the construction scope of work that, requires a lot of labor, especially skilled labor if it's expensive? Is it on the critical path? Is it something that, if you're able to, shorten that duration by, a quarter of the time frame, that's huge impacts on the construction side. We're also looking at, how safe and, how dangerous that scope of work is, and can robotics make it safer? So there are certain things that we look at in construction robotics investments. And I think like the whole, this is a tool, this is a piece of equipment, and when the workers are out on site, they see this as a piece of equipment that they can depend on to help them build faster and work faster, or keep them safe. Like I know for Canvas, with the vacuuming of all the sanding, right? That's night and day with, the guys in the field breathing in, harmful, particulates or whatever in the air, right? There's so many reasons as to why the equipment can actually make these people in the field build a lot better, right? So obviously we're bullish on construction robotics. But anyways, now back to the construction robotics kind of as an investment side of things. I'd actually like to hear from you guys how you guys plan on scaling the company. I know for a lot of investors out here, it's like you have to hit, the scale within venture timelines. We know it is capital intensive, but given that, once you're in, it's really sticky. How do you guys plan on scaling and turning, what you're working on into a really, really big company? And we'll start with Tessa.
Yeah, because I think we're the farthest along. So one of the stories that I'm just really excited about right now is that we are building all of the Walmarts across the US. And the company that approached us who's doing that is an industrial automation company. They started about like 8 months ago with a short pilot on one of their jobs. It worked really, really well, went on to the next one, went on to the next one, and now they're a 7-figure deal for us. And that was, in less than a year. And so this is what we're finding is that in the construction industry, there's a lot of potential for account-based growth, right? You get into one of these large multinational construction companies, and then you get to plan on all of their projects. And that's really the way that I think it's possible to scale really, really fast. Because once you've proven out that value on a small set of projects, you can expand really rapidly.
Kevin?
Yeah, no, we've seen a similar thing where when we get over a certain bar, there's kind of this, it goes from, okay, my manual labor, is this something I really need, to, okay, now something produces more for the first time in 80 years. We need to have this. And we've seen, we're not there with all of our customer accounts but we've seen the customer accounts that have gotten there basically instantly call us up and say, give us 2 more. And we just actually finished a deal today where a customer had said that. And basically was like, okay, I need all of my labor to have this capability because otherwise my competitors will have this capability. And so we've seen some really interesting changes happen very, very quickly with our customer base. We've especially seen it happen on customers in markets where labor is harder to find. And they've started laying it out as, I need each of my new people to have one of these. And so it's kind of bringing it in with the next generation as well.
Nice. Brent?
Yeah, for us, kind of the same issue, right? I remember our first home went up, and we were working with a home builder in Northwest Arkansas, so Walmart's hometown, right? And the home goes up, and this builder was taking anywhere from 2 to 6 weeks to frame and sheathe the home, which blew us away. They put up the first home, and we were there with like our notepads out, just a bunch of like robotics nerds, like, okay, here comes the data. And it was done in 5.5 hours. And the guy just looked to my COO and just goes, okay, can you do 400 now? And so for us, it's about scaling in a reasonable manner that allows us to still maintain control of the proprietary technology, but also improve that technology generatively. So for us, it's about speed right now, getting the robots to move faster, and then working with different types of materials as those evolve so that we can meet the market where it is. Because again, we're a tool in the hands of large-scale builders that just don't have enough labor to get it done, and we need to make it safer, because I'm going to do my stupid Brent plug I ever do it. You are 10 times more likely to die building a house in America than you were with me and my buddies in Afghanistan over 10-year periods during the height of the war. 35 service members lose their lives every year in Afghanistan. About 350 people lose their lives framing houses in America. That's unsatisfactory to me. So by making better building systems and smarter building systems, we can scale in a reasonable way and get people who, like, I signed up for that crap. I signed up like an idiot. They just want to earn a living for their family. We can actually make a better system for builders to work in concert with that.
I love that. I mean, yeah, for me, when I meet a robotics tech startup, I tell them safety and quality will get you a pilot on our job site, and productivity will get you to scale, right? And those are simple metrics that we can run by. But ultimately, yes, we are looking for new tools. We are here to save lives because we work in a dangerous industry, pardon me, and we want to prevent that, right? That's first and foremost. But at the same time, it's going to be a business decision when we get to, hey, I need to outcompete my competitors, and I found the magic bullet to do it, and I want more, right? And so that's going to come down to those metrics and that data that you've been recording. And yeah, there is a ton of room for improvement in our industry, but we have to do it at a systematic level. So it's going to require quite a bit more than what we have today.
Yeah,
I wanted to jump in. One other thing that's really interesting that we've started to find on the scaling side of things is that the data enables the kind of training and operations of it actually to be much, much more streamlined. So one of the things we do right now is all of our support is remote support. Our machine has a Zoom interface on it. So our tech support shows up right there and has all of the history of what buttons have you pushed, 360 cameras on what you've done. And we're finding that that workers on site are working really well with calling up tech support in this way and are very comfortable with it. And then what we've started doing is putting actual user videos so that if there's an error on the machine and you want to see how to do it or how to be trained on that, the video is right there for you. You've got basically a DIY training at your fingertips at all time. And we've seen the customers start to use that. And so I think this helps us not only think about how do we get machines and productivity to everyone, but how do we, upgrade the kind of training system that we have in construction, and how do we enable more people to have access to it at all times.
I was just going to add to that. Yeah, I mean, these are IoT systems. These are tools built with IoT in mind, which is great. I mean, we can leverage that data. And I think a lot of tools today, they're getting there. The systems aren't quite there. Especially on a multi-tool spectrum, but it's so easy just to be able to call up Tessa's team and say, okay, how productive were our layout robots? Oh, here's our average, and it's right then and there.
And that's just the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I love the kind of data-driven approach because I think one of the I guess one of my gripes with the construction industry is there's a lack of actuals from the data side that goes back into the system. So anyone who's talking about, oh, we can look at historical data and figure out old productivity rates or whatever, none of that is actually accurate. You almost have to do a time study of what it looks like today and then compare it with the robotic systems. Or I think, with the robotic systems, you can almost kind of backwards tell them hey, this is a new baseline for productivity for these scopes of work. So I kind of love that, data-driven approach, all the feedback loop and all that. Tessa?
Can I add something there? I mean, I think if you think about the robots that we have on job sites today, they're basically sensors on wheels.
Yep.
Right? And each one of them is collecting gigabytes of data per hour. We're just scratching the surface in terms of what we can do with that information. All of us are starting with robots that have a specific purpose in mind, and that's their reason to exist. But I think the next level will be once we start being able to, start collecting that data and making use of that data, which we're already starting to do, right? That's when the real value comes, because it's really about digitization. It's really about taking what used to be a manual job and doing it with robots, not just because the robots are doing it, but because the robots are shedding all of this information that is going to be used to make the job site more efficient in the future.
Yeah, for sure. And I know we've talked a lot about all the good things going on with construction robotics, but we know that it's still very new. And I would actually like to open it up to the panelists to almost kind of have an ask. What is it that either the investor side or the industry side that can, whether it's, something that you've seen that has been done, or if we could make a wish and see how the investors or the industry can better support construction robotics, what would that be? I'll start with Kevin and we'll just go down.
Yeah, no, that's a great one. And I've talked to some of the folks in this room about this before, but certainly as you look, we work with subcontractors, so we're really down at the kind of bottom part of the value chain where we're kind of doing the physical work. But as you look at what robotics do is they made the whole site more efficient, they make the project more efficient, and I think that value really gets realized up the chain as you start making schedules shorter, as you start creating more certainty on quality and all of that. And so we're really excited about working with general contractors, working with developers, and working with architects on, how does that value trickle up? What do they want to see so that we can start having that as part of our system? And then we'd like to create kind of a virtuous cycle in that way where subcontractors, they work with us for their own purposes to make their machines better. But in that case, they can then drive value to their customers. They get picked for more work. That reinforces kind of the movement of the tech into the industry. So I think there's this kind of virtuous cycle that we can create, but we want to start engaging folks up the value chain in that. I know some of the folks here are part of that equation.
Please reach out. Tessa?
I have a very different answer. I want to see more construction tech IPOs. And Kevin, I'm looking at you. But,
Thanks, Raja.
We can be the first if we have to, but I'd rather there be a cohort of us, right? Because that really creates validity in the space. And I think you need that to make it a self-sustaining investment area. So I want to see that happen. We are happy to blaze the trail if we have to, but would love it if there's company.
Let's make it happen.
Yes,
Henning?
please. +1. I mean, I have a vision for the future of construction sites, right? Like I want a foreman to be able to open up their app and say, okay, I need to build this today, or actually tell me what I'm building today and help me with my JHA and my toolbox talk and whatever. And I want to be able to have an army of machines that basically know that that work is going to be happening, predict the deliveries that are coming, and help us, because we're always going to have a last mile issue or challenge on our job sites. So as much as we can prefab and the less fabrication we have to do on site, the better. But at some point you're still going to have to assemble it. And I want an army of tools and machines to be able to help with that. And I want it at fingers touch or human interface, where it just says, okay, I need to build this, and it's in their native language, and they're just capable of doing it. That's the vision, I think, that could really propel our industry.
Dark construction site.
Lights out.
For us, it's about the cultural communication. My ask is really from the construction side, talk with those of us on the technology side to build a cultural understanding, because my nerds will often just be like, but this is the superior way. And you're like, yeah, but this is how it makes money. And the more we talk, the better off we are. And then the other side of that is just that patience as we grow that process together. The more investors that are putting money behind it, I'm liking ARM's IPO right now. And the more that we can have as market validity there, the better off we're all going to be in building those tools of the future.
Yeah, I would agree with that last one too. Actually, I agree with all of you, but that last one, just adding on to it, I always tell my contractor friends to provide honest feedback. Because I think one of the biggest things with construction tech and the end users, especially in the construction industry where everything is so relationship based, I think a lot of people don't want to hurt feelings. But it's like, if you provide honest feedback, that'll actually get us to build better product for you. So that one really resonates with me.
If I could add one more, the one thing I do want to do, and I want to tell all my GC friends and self-performing GC friends, is know your problems, quantify them, and be open about that. Don't be afraid. We all have the same problems. Let's invest in where we need it the most.
We all got problems. Awesome. So we have 1 minute and 30 seconds left. So we can take one question from the audience, and I'll take this one here. So the question is from Damien. Do robots in the construction industry still require sensors and cannot work without it, or out of the boundaries? Or what other challenges are there in practice? Does anyone want to answer that one?
I guess I'll start. I think there's probably a couple different answers depending on which sensors you're talking about. So for Canvas robots, the sensors are built in. They're always working. They will always require sensors, but we've focused very hard on making a machine that can just go into any site and begin to work. We don't require any BIM. We don't require any kind of plans for the site. Like if we were to roll the robot in here today, we could go and start finishing the back walls here within a couple minutes. Any worker could get that running. And I think that is where the industry will head. Challenges that we see more than are, how do you handle all the different types of spaces that there are out there? And so we work really, really well in a room like this that has big, broad walls, lots of room to operate, a lot of consistency. As you get to things like residential, you get very, very constrained spaces that need much more sophisticated algorithms or agile machines.
So I'm going to guess that this was written by a founder who's wanting to get into construction robotics. And so my advice for people who are trying to get into it, our very first product had no sensors. You have to prove the value, and that's the MVP. So you build the least possible that you can that actually does the job, and then over time you have more sensors.
Well, I guess the session is over. We are at time. Thank you all for joining this session, and thank you to the panelists.